everybody, hello again, back with another video with a couple of updates, some new installs, and some general information on how things are going lately. So I will say that I'm finally recording from the outside with the weather being so nice. I have been able to take my girl out for a few rides and it's been great. I'm not recording from the inside. I'm not blessed with a garage like some of you guys. In the meantime, I do use this bike shield. You've probably seen a couple of these or versions of these online, but there it is, bike shield on the side, and it allows me to store my bike outside during the riding season without it being compromised by the elements. Every season, this is my third season now using this thing, and every season I put on a new layer of Scotchgard, empty the can, just to ensure no rain gets in, and it's never failed me. And then during the off season, I store it in the shed in the backyard, and I'm good to go. Just pull this guy up. You pull your bike in, making sure that your tire is sitting on this anchor plate, which in turn holds down the actual framing, so that when you then pull down the lid, it helps prevent the wind from taking it. I haven't had any issues, and she's good to go. The only leak that I have had, it's not from a puddle, that is oil. So unfortunately, I did have an oil leak last week and was forced to change out my oil. But I did have, thankfully, an Indian Scout oil change kit on hand. I was about 2,500 miles away from actually needing an oil change, but the oil can was super loose and it let out an extreme amount of oil, so I didn't really have a choice. And it really just forced me to get my hands dirty a little bit sooner than I anticipated, but it was a good experience. I pulled up a couple of YouTube videos that showed me how to do the oil change. I had them basically on repeat and just did it myself. The change kit comes with 4 1-liter bottles of oil with a new oil can, 2 new crush washers for you to replace the old ones with. It doesn't have a funnel, so make sure you go out and buy a funnel if you're going to do that. And it probably took me about an hour and change. It was messier than I would have wanted, but I got it done. And now, as you can see, it's nice and dry. I don't know if you can see that. There's the oil can. Nice and dry, nice and clean. I've ridden it since. Not one issue. And it's amazing out here. But with that said, I do have a couple of updates. First being the Alex Leathercraft seats. So I'm very much liking the style of this thing. It does feel comfortable, but I have a couple of caveats. First being the passenger pillion. So as I mentioned before, I've been using the suction cups to keep this mounted, and I felt pretty confident when it was indoors, but once I brought it out and I started riding her, the cups would come off in the corners every once in a while, and I didn't feel confident in it staying on when I was on the highway. And so the issue that I was posed with was either to bolt it down, put a hole in my fender and bolt it down, or just remove it until I was ready to use it with the passenger weighing it down. And I chose to bolt it on. I went for it. I do like having this already on there in case I do ride without my saddlebags where I would have carried it. I'll always have there to put down my bag, have a passenger, an impromptu passenger be able to sit down. So I just wanted to let it ride and let it sit there. So I bolted it down. It's been working great. I still put the suction cups there to help buffer between the bottom of the pad and the fender to prevent it from scratching it up. And then when I contact Alex Leathercraft for them to reupholster my sissy bar pad, it's going to complete the look. So I'm happy with it. I haven't had a passenger sit on it yet for a ride. I've sat on it just stationary and it feels okay. But I can comment on the Solo saddle. Now, it is definitely more comfortable than stock. It feels supple. There's no real break-in that's needed. But because you're not as planted as you are with the Corbin, for instance, when you're on the highway and you hit a bump, with the lack of coverage that you have here, whereas the Corbin comes up maybe another couple of inches, between the lack of that coverage and these springs, if you're not careful, you want to slide back a little bit as you're really pushing the speed, which was an issue that I found with the stock seat, more so with the stock seat. Add the factor of the discomfort of the stock seat, it was just unbearable. So this is actually comfortable, but the slide factor is definitely there if you're not comfortable. You know, thankfully, because I have the drag bars and the mid mounts, I'm leaning more forward anyway, and so a lot of my weight isn't as planted in the back as it typically would be with a stock mounting system. So I still feel pretty anchored to the bike, and I don't regret making the change, because again, I do prefer the accessibility to the battery compartment, which was the purpose of me changing this in the first place. But for those that are considering it, do anticipate that. So basically what I'm saying is, if you prefer comfort over maybe this style, or comfort over the accessibility to the battery compartment, I say go for a Corbin. If it doesn't bother you that you have to, you know, the pain in the ass of taking apart the back mounting to access the battery compartment, I would go for the Corbin every day of the week for comfort. But I have fallen in love with this look aesthetically. I do like this better. I do like the access to the battery compartment, so that's why I've gone with this. And some good news, I have somebody that should be receiving the Corbin that I sold them hopefully soon. They live overseas, so going through customs has been a real pain in the ass. So hopefully they get it and, you know, finds his new home fairly soon. That being said, another update, if you haven't already noticed, I do have these rear sliders from Dean Speed. So they're made out of Durlin, which is, you know, a plastic, which from what I've read online, it allows the bike to be able to slide. If you do lay it down, the bike to slide without it catching like a metal would and ruining the frame. It's really meant to, you know, as it says in the name, to slide, and the plastic allows for that to happen more safely. But my only concern is where this one is mounted. If you notice on the left side, we have it mounted on the top and here at the bottom of the suspension mounting points, whereas on the right side it's at the top of the suspension mounting point, not at the bottom because it conflicts with the exhaust, but over here. My issue with that is that because it's Durlin, is that I really can't see it from this point. There's only a very small gap on the bottom and on the right side. Now, like I said, I've ridden this already a few times. You don't see any melting in there, and I haven't smelled the heat coming off of this thing when I've been riding. So far so good, but I am concerned if I were to go on a longer ride on a hot day, if it would start affecting that with the heat of the exhaust. But so far no problem, so hopefully I'll be set with that. The one plus that this did add, along with the obvious in protecting my bike, which I hope I never have to test out, the other plus that it added for me is, as you guys may have seen in my last few videos, is that I do take my daughter on the back. She's only 5, so her feet don't quite reach down here when she's riding. And so when we would ride, I would leave these flipped up and her feet would rest on the very top, the tip of this rear passenger peg. So this sits at about the same height, gives her more surface area, and she'll be a lot more comfortable there. I'm sure that's not necessarily gonna be a factor for most other people, but that's a plus for me. And so that's where I'm at. I am looking to possibly make a couple of other changes. As I do, I will update as I have to this point. But as always, if you guys have questions, about any of the modifications that I've made or the processes that I've gone through to this point, as always, ask me and I'll definitely respond. There isn't one question that I haven't responded to yet. But until the next, stay on two wheels, be safe, have a great riding season, guys.